of talks that we do on a wide variety of topics. We will be, when the time comes, we will be going back to run our events actually up on sites, many of which we've used to look at some of the lesser known sites in the hills and paths in the hills. But we will also probably be carrying this on, especially in terms of a winter series. That lesser known path, I'm actually going to try to talk to you about 21 lesser known paths. If I'm trying to do that within less than an hour, that doesn't leave very much for each of those walks and paths. But one or two quick points. First of all, some of these are very, very short. Some of these are more a walk to do during your lunch break. But we do have some of the longer routes, especially if you're prepared to spend a small proportion of your time walking along roads that link between sites in the hills. I can actually see on this slide here a number of the sites. I'm not going to be talking about all of the paths that aren't used that much, but just to put you into context. Obviously, this is the zoo. We're looking down sort of like on a south-southwest direction down along the edge of the hills. Over to the left, for example, is Cave Hill Country Park, the woodland, and within that, for instance, one of the paths through there that I'm not going to be talking about tonight is the path to the very northern end, lower down. That's past the volunteers well. But one of the other paths that I will be talking about is through this woodland. This is Hazelwood. It's one of our few patches around Belfast of ancient woodland. It's a wonderful site, but there's a path that goes up from the zoo through there and then joins onto a much better known path. You can see by looking towards the caves itself, you can see the evidence of many, well, hundreds of thousands of feet on some of the better known paths that we have across the hills. So particularly in the last few months, we've got very high numbers coming to some of our sites, but there are a number of paths, for instance, from along this path, you can turn right and walk along the back of Cave Hill. That's a route that very few people know. I'll be pointing that out. Also, it may sound a wee bit strange, but if you go along this path, you can see there's a boundary coming to that, towards that path. This site here, I'll be talking about an exciting development as far as access, additional access onto that area there. So a lot to get through, so I'll just keep going here. For those who maybe join us from quite a distance, let's just talk about exactly where the Belfast Hills are in terms of where the partnership works. It's that line of hills along the west and north of the metropolitan area, what we call the metropolitan area. So not just Belfast, but Antrim, Newton Abbey down towards Lisburn. So it's a long, thin line of uplands across three council areas. Much of it is privately owned. Those areas that are coloured in the particular, and that according to the colour code, there's 6 areas that are the major publicly accessible sites. When we first started in 2004, our job was to try to encourage and make people aware of all the sites up in the hills, and we continue to do that. But I remember Divis in particular, people, whenever we were first talking about, we were saying, have you heard of Divis before? It's just opening up. The National Trust have taken it over. And I can remember a lot of people were very wary. They were saying, is my car safe up there? And of course, we'd be saying, look, it's as safe as any other park, etc. Actually, these days, and this is just to show you what's been happening recently, extremely high visitor numbers. Those 2 images on the right are the bottom of the Divis Road. So that road actually has to be closed at during some weekends, for instance. So that's one of the reasons why we're wanting to show you up into sites in the other sites in the hills. So this is something that we're bearing in mind. So, and it's also one of the reasons why we want to talk to you about how we hope that people will use the hills. And of course, I've mentioned already to those of you who are just before the start of the talk that we have our map, but also a lot of free publications to show you where you can walk in the hills and what sort of recreation that you can find, what opportunities you can find up in the hills. Before we get through the various sites, I'd like to point out that we have good maps for some of those main sites, usually color-coded. For instance, you'll see that there's a 15-minute walk. Remember I was saying there's some of the short walks that we have on some of the sites, right up to longer walks. So that's the type of map that you'll get whenever you either go online or get the publications that we've been talking about. Just a couple of key points to make before we look at the past. We have a wide variety of partners involved in the partnership, including landowners, and we'd ask everyone to always stick to the publicly accessible land. Particularly in the last few months, we've had people going up onto sites that they haven't been before. I'm sure often enough it's that people don't know exactly where they are, but that's causing more and more problems up in the hills. But so from an insurance point of view, as well as from an accessibility point of view, please stick to those sites that you're aware are publicly accessible. As I say, at least a third of the hills is publicly accessible. But we're working to see what more we can do as far as that's concerned. And we hope to talk to you about one or two sites that may be coming up plans in terms of access. So that's one key point that I want to make. Another reason for telling you about other places to walk is that if you go up to a site and lo and behold, it's busy, such as this is Divis, it's always good to have another venue up your sleeve. I know if I picked a particular place in Fermanagh or Tyrone that I wasn't too sure of and went up to visit it and didn't know the lie of the land, as it were, if it was busy and I didn't know anywhere else, any alternatives, I would probably try to tough it out and try to find somewhere to park and go for a walk on that site. So always a good idea to get to know the other places in the hills. So we certainly do this, both from a personal point of view. So we're, I don't know about you, but I've been looking for the sites that are less busy from a personal point of view. And that means I'm discovering lots of sites that I wasn't aware of. So good idea to have at least one, if not two, other sites to go to visit, especially these days. And finally, I'm trying to explain where these areas are, but really it's up to yourself to look after your own personal safety. We are up in the hills, so there are steep sections. You don't need to spend a fortune on the full gear. For instance, the people in this photograph have got boots on. That's okay. It's a good day to be going out. They're not too far from the path. But especially if you're thinking of leading groups of people, maybe it's a good idea to check the site out first. It's also a good idea, maybe I'm showing my age, but it's also a good idea to check routes out in pairs, just in case you're way up some of the less accessible, less visited parts of the hills. It's very much up to yourself. So that's my liability issues talked about there. A couple of really good online resources as well. Some of you, many of you may well know about Street View, which is on Google Maps. You have versions on other platforms, which is this little yellow man that you see, you lift up from the bottom left corner and then suddenly the roads light up. And if you drop the yellow man on it, you get this wonderful 360-degree view of the street, of the road. But some years ago, we managed to get in touch with Google and get Google Tracker, which is sort of a knapsack version of the van that goes and takes the 360-degree views of the roads. So for all of our big sites, we've mapped out the main paths. So for instance, if you're looking at this circle here and wondering what on earth that might be like, you come and drop the man down, and this is what you see here. You get not just an image, but a 360-degree view of what that might be like. So first of all, you can decide whether or not it's of interest to you, but also you can take a look at that and go, no, I don't think I'll take some of my older folk there, or I think I better wear my boots, and you can walk along the route in the same way as you can travel along the street in Street View. And it's a really good way of checking where the main routes are, and you're much better prepared for that. That's just on our main routes, but it's a great resource to have if you're going to be prepared and to research. The other great source of information, we certainly love to use it from a professional point of view, from a staff point of view. Type in Strava heat map into Google, and that shows you maps that are basically show you how busy sites have been whenever people have loaded Strava. It's a fitness app that maps out your routes. So whether it's on your phone, whether it's on your Fitbit, on your smart watches, etc. Now it's a little bit difficult to get in. It'll ask you to log in. You just click and ignore it. Although to be honest, if you sign up to it for free, then you get even more detailed maps. But you need to click on satellite to get the image, the background image, and zoom in. You start off in America, you have to get over to here or wherever you're looking at. Every time someone goes down one of these roads or walks across this area with their Strava app on, it marks this out. So you get in sort of a light pale purple color those areas that perhaps just one or two people have walked across. Then you get these areas that are more popular. It starts to turn to red, to orange, and then to white, and that shows you where the main routes are. Now, of course, this doesn't show you only the permissible paths, but you start to see where other people are leaking out and walking across fields that there may be no permissions for. You might not be worried about that, but it's just to show you exactly where the popular routes are. And that's extremely useful for us in terms of knowing where how people are getting into sites and where we might look to create future additional access onto the site. So that's just when you Google Strava heat map, and right through all the walks I'm going to do, that's a great way of just double checking exactly what route you might want to use, etc. So that's two online guides and maps that would be very useful for you. Of course, we've got all the other materials as well. I'm going to start from the very northern end and work our way down. And actually, as I did this, I actually found out that all of these sites are capable of being linked together. But as before, I'll point out Carnmoney Hill, a relatively small one of our sites. You still can get, at least as far as this is concerned, a walk of about 2 hours. I could imagine that would be about 1.5 hours for most people, or most walkers. Fairly steep in sections, very close to the built-up areas around O'Neill Road and Rathcoole. So very close and very much looked after by the local residents. You can see there's a long shape. You'll see the map doesn't point to true north. We have fitted it in there. But actually, if you look at the next item here, that's that view there of that public site. It's most of the wooded area towards the eastern side of the hills. But there is another way to get up to the top of Carnmoney Hill. You've got a lot of farmland, few plans to open up, for instance, this area here, and there was a proposal to have a park here. But in the here and now, there is a path that takes you up. It's only about half a mile. It only takes you about 20 minutes, right from the middle of a suburban area. If we take a closer look at this site here, It's actually from Carnmoney Hill Parade. It's just close to that junction. And for the first 5 minutes, you're walking up a very narrow laneway. You feel like you're walking up the back of houses, and then you come out into the open area. And if you're actually down here, this is the view you get. You can miss it quite easily. Keep your eye out for that red box. It's still here, and there's a step wall, and that's the narrow path that you go up. There's a sign there that says that the gate closes at 6 p.m. So that's something to bear in mind. That means it's not a true right of way, but the council have created a path and maintain a path right up to the top of the hill. So good idea to get in during lunchtime or during the early afternoon. Doesn't take too long, but it's a site that a lot of people aren't too aware of. And the view you get up from there, now I was up there, wonderful view across the valley between Cave Hill and Carnmoney Hill, where the M2 runs up, and right across to Belfast. You can see I was actually up surveying this wildfire that was up there, but you can see that for a fairly short walk, straight up, straight down again, that's a great view right across. Of course, the moorings in the distance as well. Not a site that an awful lot of people know about, but again, a good short walk. And if you live up around that site, I'll keep talking about where you park, etc. But as I go through all these sites, you'll realize there are many tens of thousands of people who live within walking distance of these sites. So that's the western route up to the top of Carnmoney. I'll be giving out our contact email at the end. So if you've got any questions about the detail of how to get to these sites, it's either on our website or we'll be happy to answer your specific questions. I'm going to be zooming through some of the rest. For instance, just south of Carnmoney Hill, you then have the Valley Leisure Park. It's now developing quite nicely in terms of woodland. If you don't know the site, if you're heading up the M2, that hill, up the M2, the steep section, you've got Cave Hill on your left, and you've got the Valley Leisure Park on your right. You could walk around that in an hour. I know there's a great park run that goes there. You have to run around this hill twice and down. So it's not a massive site. They've invested quite a lot, but actually its value is really to do with the entrance to the southern car park, Kentucky Fried Chicken. There's a wonderful valley that comes on down wooded area there. So the value of the Valley Leisure Park is that it then connects down. There's a walk down along the Glasnevin River, Glasnevin, and that then takes you down close to the lagoon. If you're ever going up the M5 and you can see water on either side, that takes you to Gideon's Green, and then on up to underneath the M5. There's a subway that takes you on to Hazelbank. Great little walk, wonderful wee river. We actually work on it quite frequently in terms of assisting the local community group in terms of litter lifts, etc., looking after the site. But it's because of the high number of people there, it's used quite frequently, and that's a great walk that I could suggest. I think it's about 3 miles. Whenever I did it, I started at Hazelbank and walked up through Glasnevin and through the Valley Leisure Park, and I take groups there, and we had the bus drop us off at one place and finish at the lower part of the Valley Leisure Park. And but you could of course walk back down. Then they come to connect up all of those sites plus a bit more, and then suddenly you're into a 8.5 mile walk. Did this with my family just over the late summer. Again, parking in Hazelbank, which is just off the first. It's a turn right at the first roundabout as you go up the M2 or M5. So we walked right down through Hazelbank, Gideon's Green, Glasnevin, up through the Valley Leisure Park that takes you up towards, that's the Antrim Road and the O'Neill Road coming down. You need to walk along the road for a certain section past the cemetery, and then there's a quick route at what's called Dunanny, a little cul-de-sac, and then up over the hill. That's a beautiful walk down Fernley Lane. Then you can walk up the road again till you get to Monkstown, and this is a wonderful, again, another wooded valley walk, very popular. It actually takes you past 2 viaducts, and then on down through past the Glenavon, it's called, and you're on to the Shore Road and walking down a beautiful walk down along the shore. That's a great walk. This site here, yeah, that's the sort of, the modern viaduct, very impressive site. Anybody I take down there, I deliberately don't tell them about. The older one is is really attractive as well, but it's not what you expect on a woodland walk. So a great site to go to visit, and that's a great walk to try to do. Now, and it took us about 3.5 hours. There's quite an ascent up to the top. Great views from across there, right over to Scotland, and you're back down on the seashore as well. Just at the very bottom of that image, you can see there's a little bit of woodland there. So we're going from an 8.5 mile walk down to one of the small sites that's actually on the Antrim Road, Thronewood. That little path is just over half a mile. So how would you do it in about 25-30 minutes? But it's very, very close and very adjacent to the Antrim Road. There is another path called the Snaky Path that takes you down from there onto the White Rock Road. And actually, if you look, you're just right beside one of the few ways of crossing the motorway. And just outside of this view, there's a path or a road that then takes you to the Valley Park. So you could actually connect this up to that previous walk I was talking about. So that would be, but parking is a bit of a problem. I would usually park down there. You do not want to park on this very busy and open stretch of the Antrim Road. You can see here, that's the entrance to Thronewood. Quite a few, if you've traveled up the Antrim Road, you may have seen that sign. It's a pretty well positioned sign in terms of being a shop window, but that's the path down the Snaky Path as well. So you've got both of those coming out together. Sometimes we do events, particularly volunteering in Thronewood, but as I say, parking up on here, get the bus instead might be a better way, or even get on the bike, for instance. So that's another site. But over to the left, as you can imagine, we're getting towards Cave Hill. And I want to talk about some of the lesser known parts of Cave Hill. If you head past, you come from the city, you head past Thronewood, come up to the zoo car park, and park in the car park. And as you go up towards the zoo, if you look to your right, there's a small path that takes you along the edge of the zoo. Then that takes you up a set of steps up what's called Nance's Path through Hazelwood. It's one of the few paths that is actually named after the person that constructed it. Andrew Nance was a senior manager in the tram company that first put the trams right up this direction. And not only did they do that, but they actually created Bellevue as a destination site to encourage people from Belfast to travel up towards to use their tramway, and then to walk right up this old pathway that then if you take a left, takes you towards McCart Fort. Steep section there, but a great walk, and in particular it's a great walk through wet ancient woodland. So that means that because that woodland's been there for so long, you get wood anemones, wood sorrel we see here, but really interesting paths, old traditional stone paths. Can be a bit wet. The drainage can be quite interesting. There's a lot of rivers and streams coming off those steep slopes. So get your boots on for that particular route. But that takes you down to McCart's Fort. And then from McCart's Fort, you can see how these all join up, as it were. Next time you're in McCart's Fort, you probably have come along this path. But if you look right to the back, you'll see that there's an older path over a stile that takes you up onto basically an area that's a little bit higher than McCart's Fort. McCart's isn't the high point of Cave Hill, past an old Bronze Age cairn, and then you're on a route that takes you down to the back of the heathland on Cave Hill. That route can take you right across to the left along the edge, down along a wonderful Ballyachin Nature Reserve, take you through a couple of really muddy quite patches down there, takes you right down to the Ballyachin car park on the Upper Hightown Road. So that's a lesser known path round the back of Cave Hill Country Park. And of course that connects up to all of these better known paths, as it were. That's the view from the height just to the back of McCart's Fort. That looks over, first of all, the heathland that we have in Cave Hill Country Park, but it also looks towards this much lesser known hill. This is called Colin Ward. You'll know it by the telecommunications mast on that site. That site is just in the process of being purchased by the Woodland Trust. So in all likelihood, I'm not too sure exactly when. I'm sure the Woodland Trust want to plan it up with woodland first, but I would say before too long, there will be new paths along that site. And that's with the fantastic views up towards Slemish and towards the west. The very start, I showed you where the path joins onto the boundary. This land here will also be in the Woodland Trust possession. So the idea would be, and it's just an idea, they're in discussions that you would go up. One of the ways up would be via the zoo that would take you up to this point, and then there'd be a path that takes you up onto Colin Ward and then across to Cave Hill. So suddenly we're, I wouldn't quite say doubling, but we're greatly increasing the size of this public area. And of course, it's primarily for woodland. Not all of this will be wooded. Those peaty uplands will be left alone, but it's more these open fields that will be planted up. So that's a very exciting development that will mean there'll be new paths in the hills. Going back down again here, and we're looking back towards the city, there's a path coming off this main path work. There's the path down to Ballyachin, Upper Hightown. But when you're heading down there and you're going past the little waterfall, there's a path that takes you down through actually Daddystown and then down, right down into Colin Glen, steep descent, right down to Ballycillan. And again, you can see the number of people that are living around here. But as well as that link that takes you from Ballycillan right up into Cave Hill, there's another path, lesser known path, that takes you up a fairly steep field up to the Crumlin Road. And that is the Boys Model School. So that's just to orientate you. We've been doing a lot of work on this in the last few years. Kissingate and path, also going through a wildflower area. And that is a route that will take you up from Cave Hill right up to the Horseshoe Bend. And close to that actually is was a project a few years ago, Farsight project, that created a sculpture. So you're passing by that, you may have seen that from the road. And again, that's a route that not too many people are using. We know that from that Strava heat map that we've been looking at. Folks, I'm actually going to take a couple of minutes break there. I forgot to say about putting questions into the chat box. So if you want to put the kettle on again or whatever, we're just going to take a very quick break, but also a chance for you to ask any questions about any of the routes that I've been talking about. I know I've charged through quite a lot there, but Lizzie, are there any questions?
No questions at the moment from anyone.
That's because we forgot to say to type in any questions, isn't it? Anybody want to ask any questions? I hope I haven't rushed through what's a lot of possibilities there.
Can I ask, we went to Carnmoney and walked up Fern Lane, is it?
Yes. Yeah.
And because there were an awful lot of people everywhere and it was lovely, there was just 5 of us just walking along. But we got near the top and then we couldn't actually find the top of Carnmoney Hill. We went past, there was like some brick building, but that was, I don't know where we were really, but we never came to the top.
That does sound like you're heading up beyond at the minute. You can't get from the summit. Remember I showed you that second path, that west path that takes you to the summit. You can't officially get from Carnmoney Woods up to the top. So there's about 2 fields.
Right.
Lizzie, I don't think there's any stiles there, is there? Lizzie? No. So I'm not too sure. So I think you must have headed on up towards the summit itself. It doesn't actually go up to that.
Right.
Yeah, there is a stile at the top which takes you onto farmer's ground. He was getting fed up of his hedges always getting destroyed, so there is an unofficial path that then can take you onto that trig point that you showed the images of, Jim.
Yeah, but I do think, Melanie, you've got to take a good look at the maps. Also, stick your location on, if you've got a smart enough smartphone, stick your location, and that's a bit of a game changer, both in terms of knowing where you are, but also in terms of mapping out your route.
Yeah.
Remember, I also mentioned Strava. I use another app. It may not be your cup of tea, he said, referring to what's on the screen there, but having a, especially if you're not too sure about a route, having something that's turned on. Actually, for work, quite often we would turn on share our location on WhatsApp. So Lizzie can be watching when I'm up mapping a route or something like this here on my own from a safety point of view. But that then means you can go back and you can see exactly where you went. I realize we're flying through various possible routes, but you are going to have to either talk to us about the detail of where to go or through each bit. Actually, that Google Tracker, for instance, would probably have shown you where to walk to get right round that section down to Fernley Lane. But it's a lovely patch.
Yeah.
Was that fairly recently, Melanie?
Yeah, it was over Christmas, and we did have a Belfast Hills map, but we couldn't find it.
My goodness.
We set off going, how hard could this be?
Well, I must say that often that I find the most interesting places when I get lost. It's a mental attitude, but listen, very quickly, any other questions?
Yeah, quite a few questions have come in, and one is just a sort of comment that I can ask about. It says about the previous recordings of these talks. We only recorded last week's one for the first time, and we have a Belfast Hills YouTube channel. If you go onto our own website, there's a wee icon for YouTube and you can just click on it and it takes you through. So I am recording this one tonight, and so it will then, hopefully, if I get technology right, before the end of the week, it'll be up too. There was a question saying, how long would the walk from the zoo to McCart's Fort take?
Listen, you guess and then I'll guess.
I was thinking about 40 minutes.
Yeah. That last section up is actually quite steep.
It is. There's a wee bit of huffing and puffing, but it's not that long physically, but it's a wee bit steep.
Yeah. The earlier bit in the woodland, you need to tend to go to the right. There used to be another route along the edge of the zoo. When you come up to the set of steps, there's a famous set of steps, turn right and try to make your way on up there. Obviously, there's another way to do it, of course, and that's to do the more common route up to McCart's and then get your way down. That might actually be a way of sussing the site out. But yes, I would think 40 to 45 minutes. Some other people that I walk with would be about 2/3 of the way up and say I'm not doing it and head back again.
Oh, we know
But,
these people here are much hardier than that. So that brings us on nicely to the next question, which is asking about the path at the back of the zoo. Is it closed? It
yes.
seems to be in poor condition and fenced off a bit at the stream. Or it says, or are you talking about another route? So I think there's sort of two
Okay.
questions there almost, in terms of, yes, the one at the zoo is closed, but the route you were talking about is going up as opposed to immediately across.
I think I better go back to that. Okay. Yeah. And sorry, this may not be the best way to show this, but yes, you go along the edge of the zoo itself. You go up a set of steps. At the steps, there used to be a path that would take you along the edge of the zoo right up to the caves. There's been landslips on that. We still like to push Belfast City Council to look at whether that can be reinstated, but that is the one that's closed at the minute. Now, when I say closed, I mean officially closed. I am aware that there are people who tramp through regardless. But when you get to the set of steps, take a right. You can see there's a couple of dog legs. There's at least one dog leg there. Take your time and go up that path, and it should bring you to that. But what I would also suggest, and of course this might be a problem in terms of where you park your car, etc. But if you could start from here, maybe go up from the castle and then head down. A lot of people take that quick right down to the bottom of the caves. Just keep on going and get down. Then you'll try that route there and head down. That's a more gentle way of doing it. I wouldn't say it's our hardest, steepest path, but it's a good path. It's a good hard path. You'll certainly know that you've done it afterwards. Any other questions, Lizzie?
Yes, sorry. The lady who was asking about the route from the zoo to McCart's, she actually meant then on to Ballyacaghan. So if we're talking about maybe 40 minutes to the top of McCart's, probably about another 20-25 to get down to Ballyacaghan, because at that stage you're just going downhill. So it's a really nice, easy walk after you've made it up to the top. Would you agree with that in terms of timings?
Yes, I think I'll put a little bit more to that.
I'm a quick walker, clearly.
The other thing I would mention is I think that turn's not too difficult. You're getting close to the gate and you can see there's a path to the left. I think there's a couple of places here, Lizzie, that you could get lost fairly easily. So maybe park up at Ballyacaghan, go up through the stile as opposed to the path here, go across the road past the Rath. It's quite difficult to find that. Take a look on Strava, you would see this. There's a little stile there, and go through there and then make your way to here. Maybe go back again, you know what I mean? That would take you, what, 25 minutes, 20 minutes? So maybe spy that out and then spy this out and start to join the connect. But that's a beautiful little area here.
Yeah.
Purple orchids, all sorts of things there in the summertime.
Yeah, can be a bit wet underfoot, but really nice.
Yeah.
Question just about terms of parking for Nance's Path. Is that the zoo car park?
Yes, I would park at the zoo car park. And just as you look towards the zoo, walk towards the zoo, take a look to the right and you'll see the path takes you up that general direction.
Great. A final question then. There was a lady who says, hoping you're going to cover this, but is there public access way to get from Cave Hill to Divis?
Well, I will be talking about that. And these routes that I will be talking about will connect that up or will show you why it's not connected up at the minute. That's our most common question that's asked. Okay, so shall I?
Keep going, yes. There's a few more questions, but we'll pick them up at the very end now.
That's great, that's great. Now, if you remember, I've taken you from Colin Glen up to the Horseshoe Bend. And if you're prepared to walk along the roads for a bit, when you come out, again, another water service entrance here, take a right. You've got to cross the junction at the Upper Hightown Road, which is quite broad, so be careful. And just go along this footpath here, single file, it's quite a narrow path until you come to another water service road. Head down there and then it takes you on to a path along the very top of Ligoniel Park, an area called Boodle's Dam, and then down onto Ligoniel Road, walk down Mill Avenue, and then that takes you to one of my favorite places, which is Ligoniel Dams. Ligoniel itself is an old mill village. There's the remains of a number of mills, but there was a whole range of dams. Boodle's Dam, the main Ligoniel Dam, and then there's the upper dam. There's 4 dams there altogether, and there's a wonderful sets of walks right along the dams themselves. There's a view right across. Actually, you can see the service road that comes down from the upper Crumlin Road. Then you walk through the woodland, and there's the park. Walk across here, 5 minutes, get you up to this site. All the information about Ligoniel Dams is on our website, how to get there, the walks that are in it. But a very different site, quite efficient spot, and a good bits of woodland to walk that are alongside the upper dam in particular. Let me get flying ahead here. If you walk along this route, it takes you towards the Wolf Hill Road, which used to be a passable road from a vehicle point of view. It still is a public road, but you wouldn't take a car down it, basically. So that means that it's as good as a good walking route. When you walk down here, please be respectful of they're walking right past a few houses here, but this route takes you right down a sort of dead end Glencairn Road to a Kissing Gate. Then there's a route that takes you through the fields into past Fernhill House and into Glencairn Park. And then across from that is Forth River Valley, and there are paths and bridges across there. And that is the start of another proposed route. You'll see there's a kink in the middle of this path here, and that is because it's a ford. So if you're thinking of going up this road, don't go as in this last week whenever it's been raining for 3 or 4 days, unless you got your waders on. Usually in the summertime, and relatively, if it's been dry for a few days, your boots will take you across that. It's just a small stream, but just be aware of that if you're particularly if you're planning to take a group along that. So that route there, so you need to take that in mind. But that means you can walk from where we've been talking about right the whole way down through Ligoniel, down through Glencairn, and on to the Forth. And if you've been paying attention to what's been proposed, there's a big proposal and it's actually happening, of course, now by Belfast City Council to connect right from the Forth River, just where we've been talking about. There's the Glencairn, right down through this area here, down through what's the old Mackey site, past the Springfield Dam. There had been talk of going straight down into the graveyard, but they're talking now of going up the Springfield Road, up past the White Rock Leisure Centre, down along the Falls Park, and down through the Bog Meadows. That actually connects you up to a cycleway that takes you the whole way into the centre. So you can see the great potential for linking this up. And this is well in hand. Let me just talk, for instance, about the Springfield Dam area. Some of you may know, many don't. That's what it's looking now at the minute. That's a great view. They put a new bridge across, so there's a car park up here. But the route that I've just shown you goes from this woodland to the far left, down through past what's called the Innovation Centre, down past the Belfast Met, and then you go on this greenway path. You can see the greenway path, 3 meters, hard surface, both for cycling and walking, and that's the type of route that'll be going right on down from here, connecting all of that up. That will then eventually mean you can walk right on or cycle right down into the centre. So that's coming from There's Cave Hill. Actually, you can just about see Colin Ward, and there's Carnmoney. That is some distance to walk through all of that there. And there is no reason why, provided you're happy to, do you see those little blank areas? Those are along roads. You can, in theory, walk all of that at the minute. That is an 8-mile route. So you can just imagine trying to connect all that, provided you're happy to walk along sections of road. And I know personally, if I've spent an hour walking over Cave Hill, walking 10 or 15 minutes along the road, no problem. That is quite a route. I'll point down towards this section here. Of course, you're starting to see Divis on the Black Mountain. And for the lady that asked about the connection, there used to be a route that went across here. But you can see with this route being developed, the other option is to get down towards this route here. And currently, there's a study being done by a community group here. They've got funding via Belfast City Council to look at the possibility of doing what's called the Hatchetfield route. This route goes up from the White Rock stroke Springfield roads up right up to, this is the Divis, the National Trust property here. And it's going through a slightly green area there called the Hatchetfield. If you're not aware of this area, if you happen to be passing, look up via your, from the Westlake, for instance, you will see in the middle of the Black Mountain, you'll see this green area here. Used to be the shape of a hatchet. That bracken is starting to come in, unfortunately. There's the sycamore. There's a nice patch of woodland around an old farmhouse that used to be there. And that's the path that they're talking of possibly getting access from the city straight up towards Divis as an alternative to the Divis Road route. And that's the view you get down from that route. It's a wee bit beyond the Hatchetfield. That's the Falls Park, that's the Bog Meadows, and that's on right on to the the city. That's Boucher Road, etc. So great views, similar to the views you get from Divis itself. Back to Divis. First of all, again, this Strava shows you that route that's being proposed. You'll see there are people that are already using it. There are walks and events up there formally, but that's being used informally at the minute, and that connects right to the whole system. So if that happens, then you've got one connection up to Divis that from which you could then walk through Glencairn and Ligoniel and on to Cave Hill. There's also talk of other connections. As you can imagine, it's a very live subject in terms of access, and we're hoping to see progress on that. Also mention, as well as this main access, there is another access route towards Hannistown. It's that very bright red one just down the very bottom. That is a connection from Divis down towards Hannistown that then brings you towards Colin Glen. And you can see that route, or you should be able to see that route just up here connecting down. Colin Glen, one of our best rivers, a real salmon and trout river, but very well known from a multiple path point of view. Quite a few of you will have been down that. My apologies for the quality of this image, but again, this is our street view images of all the routes down through Colin Glen. A lot of people only stick to the paths in amongst the woodland, but there's two things I want to point out. There's an additional area called Mila's Lake. There's a lovely little path around that. Anybody that's done park run will know that all too well. You have to run twice around that when you're doing the Colin Glen park run. There's also developments up at the very top. This is a new car park, so there'll be increased access to the site. There's a toboggan run and a zip line being developed here as well. Not everybody is happy about it. You've got all these walks through old woodland. It's not ancient woodland because it was cut down during the war. But there is development happening there. So keep your eye on that from a path point of view. Okay, so that's the developments that are in the lower section of Colin Glen. And that's the lake that I mentioned, Mila's Lake. That's an extra walk that not very many people do when they're up at Colin. So if you're ever walking up there, just take a good look at their panels and find out how to get that additional sight as well. I'll also mention that when you go straight up Colin, go under the bridge at the Bad Bend on the Glen Road. So there's a walkway that takes you into the National Trust property, which is the upper Colin Glen. We have mapped out these two routes, but there's a path that takes you further up, right up to what's called the Old Rumbling Hole. At one stage, there was also a access through Glenside Community Woodland. We're working hard to try to re-establish that. That would then mean you connect up to this access, which I showed you earlier. It takes you up to the sort of the very southern end of Divis. So there's that connection there. But there is a path that takes you up there. I have to say, Upper Colin Glen, Lower Colin Glen was felled during the Second World War. It's all regrown. Upper Colin Glen wasn't felled. Actually, the National Trust raised money to save it from being felled in the late 40s. It is a very wild and wonderful place to visit, but it's a site that is very wet. It's a summer walk. Go up there and have a look. May, June, July. There's a good set of steep steps as you come in there immediately. Get up to the very top steps, and there's a nice path that takes you along the edge. There's another middle one that takes you up to, there used to be a bridge across there, take you up to the middle of the site, back down to the river. Really nice place to visit. And it takes you about 40 minutes to get up to there, I would say, from the lower car park at Colin Glen. But again, that's a site that not too many people visit, and a great site from a botanical point of view. There's lots of well, actually not just wildflowers, but also insects, and a very spectacular river as well. Quite steep, so you need to watch yourself, but you are walking up into a hill area, so a great wee place to explore, and a lovely site. And you get beyond the crowds that are in the lower section of Colin Glen. We've done 17 so far. Let's keep going here. When you're doing Colin Glen, if you look at the map, you'll see this little area here. One of the smallest areas that I want to talk to you about tonight, the Half Moon Lake, completely surrounded by housing. It's on the Suffolk Road, but you're very close if you come up to the lower end of Colin Glen. Worth a visit if you're passing. Wonderful site, great views across the hills, beautiful wee site, big mill reservoir basically. And over to the right is a great stand with wonderful views across Belfast. Thing about this site is, if you want to walk around it, it takes you 10 minutes. So that's why we don't organize too many walks, because usually I walk you around for 10 minutes. And do you want to walk it around again? So a great wee place to visit for a quick walk, and just if you want to explore. That's the view to show you how much enclosed it is. It really is a hidden area, and that's the view from the Suffolk Road. Keep your eye out for that pink bus stop sign. I hope it's still pink, but you can park up here fairly easily and walk in. And it's well worth a visit. 15-20 minutes. So if you're not up to a long walk, that's a really interesting place to check out. Okay, then we'll move to our one area of special scientific interest. Well, actually there's two now. There's Bellevue, the one I showed you earlier, is now a geological area of scientific interest. This is a great site to visit in the summertime because of its botanical interest, I'll mention that a little bit further. Again, you'll see there's a number of set, I think they're waymarked ways. Most people stay to this upper section here, but there is another route that takes you down along the Stonyford River. Get your wellies on if you're walking at the winter time. Even in the summertime, that is quite a, you're out in the country, that's quite a rough path, but it's a part that a lot of people don't go anywhere near. There are also paths that take you to this section here, and you cross the Ballycullen Road, and there's one field. You walk up that field, there's a little Ulster Wildlife sign if you're driving down the Ballycullen Road there. Great area to go up with a fantastic view across South Belfast. Each of these sites has a slightly different view. So there are some lovely areas that people don't really, people come and do the walk there. There's a lot of people parking up on this road now, and quite a few here since lockdown. They're discovering Slieve na Cloy, but there are other areas to discover. As I mentioned, there's lots of people walking it at the minute, but go there in June and it's covered in fantastic orchids, a whole range of other wildflowers, because the site hasn't been farmed in a modern way. So it's run by Ulster Wildlife. Great butterflies up there as well. June, July, that's the time to go up. I have to say, if you go up there the last few days, it's always the coldest hill. The wind usually is blowing across the whole of the Loch Ness, right in your face. So I love to go there in the summertime. A great spot that's known. Now we're getting near the end. We're getting down just off the southern end, Stonyford Reservoir. A lot of people walk along the edges of Stonyford Reservoir. Actually, from that very first thing I told you about making sure you're in public accessible ground, there's a question mark as far as this is concerned. This is owned by NI Water. They basically, I think it would be fair to say, turn a blind eye to people who are walking this area here. People park up in this ground here. You'll often see cars parked there, quite informally, but if you park there, you'll also see there's a route up here. That's the views. You see people park up right along here. You can see there's a bit of erosion there, but there is another route that takes you here, and this is the last walk I'm going to suggest. You would think I would save the best to last, but it's Slieve na Cloy Sewage Works. Not just a sewage works, it is a reed bed system, and it is open to the public. There's a little kissing gate here. You walk down this route. If you're in any way a bird watcher, this is a great site to go to. I've seen lapwing in here. I've seen water rail. You can hear, if you're walking here and you don't know your bird and you hear what sounds like a little pig squeal, that is water rail. It's not something you see every day. This is a multiple pond sewage system. Let's just say if you're down this end, you'll get no smell at all. This is the pump that takes it out. This is the Stonyford River. It's also some great views of this little river that then flows down in through Stonyford. And but a really interesting site to visit. Lots of paths, as you can see, and great from a bird watching point of view. You are quite likely to raise a couple of snipe out and around this area here. It's a great site for wading birds. If you're really lucky, you'll get some curlew as well. We often hear curlew up and around Slieve na Cloy. And that brings me to my last main point that I want to make. And that is, you may be looking at this from a walking point of view, but think about other ways to get to know the hills. I have to say that a lot of the ways that these sites connect up, I've found through my runs. You're trying to get away from pounding the streets. Maybe this isn't the best way to sell running to you because they've just come up this slope. This is a sort of 30-40 degree slope. This is up through the hatchet field. but think of other ways that you can use the hills. That's why we've got a recreation guide. You can cycle on some of our sites, you can bird watch, you can geocache, you can volunteer. There's a whole range of other ways to get to know the hills, and that's how you'll really start to find these little nooks and crannies away from the crowd that are well worth seeing. So listen, that's my rush through the 21 sites. Again, I hope that you find that useful. I'm very happy to sit here and take any questions, Lizzie.
Yes, there is. I'm just trying to zoom to the top of them here. Yep, so the last one is it possible to link Ballyduff and Carnmoney Hill?
It's getting very close to it. Ballyduff, the big landfill site that's up there, is again being going to be purchased, fingers crossed, by the council, who will then have it managed by the Woodland Trust. And we have strong hopes that definitely Ballyduff will connect up to the summit, and we would have strong hopes that it would connect up. You can see that the path that the longer path I'm talking about, the Ballyduff will be a sort of side shoot, as it were, but we're certainly hoping that there's detailed plans of how that's going to be planted up Ballyduff itself, in terms of a woodland and park area with footpaths. Maybe 5 years before that happens. There's quite a long delay in terms of the way the site has to be left. So fingers crossed that will happen in the next while. We'll have to wait for the detail to see exactly how it connects up, but that's being worked at both from a Antrim and Newton Abbey Council point of view, from a Woodland Trust point of view, and as much as we can help by ourselves. Okay.
Brilliant. So then we have a question about Ligoniel Dams, and can you walk beyond the dams up to the hills?
You can walk from the dams down to Glencairn, and you can walk from the dams up towards Cave Hill. That's the other. In the picture you see the Hatchet Field and the proposals for that. There is a route that was basically an old road for the army to get up to their telecommunications up at the top of Divis. It was their emergency road during the snow. A lot of people have been walking on that, but that is not public access. And that road has had a lot of problems during the summer lockdown in terms of high usage, but also in terms of litter and fly tipping. Again, that's another area that we would hope eventually we would, and certainly community groups would hope that there would be some form of access up to the northern end of Divis. You can see that there's a massive, this last few months we've been hit by a massive wave of people wanting to come up to the hills. We may used to have looked upon this as being a nice extra, an additional thing for Belfast. Now we realise that it's a need. We need this from our mental health to make these connections. And also, certainly the older statistics said that 1/3 of people in Belfast didn't have access to a car. So we need these additional routes and additional ways of connecting up these green spaces for our own mental health. Okay, so we're working on that, and there's work being done on that, but we'll see how that goes.
Okay. Is there any talk of making the car park at Divis bigger, or what do you think is going to happen with the visitor numbers, especially with the snow and all forecast?
Lizzie and I were at a meeting this morning specifically about that, and there are going to be there's work going on to hopefully do some improvements to the road immediately. There are plans for a major expansion of the existing car park. There's funding already being secured. The plan was to do this hopefully in 2 to 3 years. They're desperately looking to see if we can do that earlier. So there are certainly plans to do that. And there's also talk of park and ride, shuttle bus, and of course these potential other routes that may or may not happen. So yes, it's suddenly there was a yes, we better get a bigger car park in the next couple of years, and suddenly it would be great to have it in a couple of months. But certainly we've been, or certainly the National Trust have been really stretched by the number of people coming up to that site, as has Cave Hill and other sites, Colin Glen as well. Big numbers of people coming up. But yes, there are definite plans, and we'd hope that those will be fast tracked to get a bigger car park.
Great. A little question in saying, how do you get to the Hatchet Field from the Springfield Road?
From the Springfield Road?
Yep.
You go up the White Rock Road, and there's actually a very narrow country lane that then turns down and becomes the Ballygomartin Road. There is a route that's used for walks, etc., that takes you through the fields and joins on to, actually what you're seeing there used to be an old road that went from Hannistown round the back of the quarry, straight over the hill, through the gap and down the Ballygomartin Road. So you would be walking up what used to be an old trackway, an old road, and those trees are just beside. You can see that flat area, that was an old farmhouse, and there was a track that took you down onto the White Rock Road. There really isn't public access there, so it's quite difficult to down through that. So it's very difficult to tell people exactly how to go, but you would in at least in theory have to ask for landowner permission to go up there. So I can't really tell you exactly how to go. Remember, I've got that email, info@belfasthills.org, to answer any specific questions. But Lizzie, you keep asking, going through the questions.
Yep, there. And obviously if you're at the stage where you have to head on, just head on and leave us, as we are past our time now. Little question about the booklets, and were they available from the Welcome Centre?
They were, Lizzie, weren't they?
They were at various times. Often they did run out of stock very quickly and weren't that great at telling us that they'd run out of stock. So yes, at times you could get it, but as I say, we definitely have them in the office if you want to come in and see us directly. Give us
a quick email at info@, or just, well, the office number was usually somebody in, and we can always arrange to have them sitting at the door or something sensible as far as that's concerned. So just email us and we'll see what we can do. We put a lot of work into it, so we're more than glad to get into people's hands.
Great. Okay. Little question about where the recording's going to be. I'm going to put it onto our YouTube channel, the Belfast Hills YouTube channel. If you can just Google it directly, or if you go into our own website, belfasthills.org, there's a little link to the YouTube channel directly in there, and you just click in. So I'm hoping, as long as technology goes well, I'll have it up before the end of the week for you.
Okay.
So yeah, a lot of just thank yous coming along here. Oh yeah, there's a question here. Is there a car park at Springfield Park?
Yes, Springfield Park, as in the dam?
I'm not sure. There's no clarification on that.
Yes, it is. Yes. Yes, as you head down from, let's just imagine you're coming down the Springfield Road. You come to the roundabout at that would take you into Springvale on the right, or the West Circular Road on your left. You'll see the fire brigade building on your, in front of you. So you just go straight on, past the fire service, past on your right hand side, the fire station, then past, I think it's a Farset International entrance. And then there's a car park on your right, and I think it's got about 20 parking spaces. It's an interesting wee site that I showed you there, because you walk down, you go across that bridge, and then there's a walk to your right or a walk to your left, and you can walk up one and then walk back down. It's a funny T shape. Obviously, it's made to be part of a longer route, but a really interesting wee spot to find. I've only been on down there a couple of times myself. Nice little bit of woodland too, and a few wildfowl as well.
Great. There was a wee question about where is our office. Our office is in Hannistown. You've all got the link through my email, and at the bottom of that my email it actually had the address of our office. So if you need to actually get the proper address, just check the email that I sent out. Little question about, would the Stonyford sewage works be suitable for running a few laps? Just by the by, there was someone else commented whilst the Stonyford one came up that the last time they were up at Stonyford there was a chain around the kissing gate, and someone else would like to know what a kissing gate is. So
okay, let me just go back. You just park those questions just slightly. Can you just see this image? This is Colin Glen. That's the Suffolk Road. This is the Glen Road here. That is the Anti-Town News office. You can turn right up Hannistown Hill, and I'm sitting now in that building there. So whether you're coming down Hannistown Hill or you're getting onto the Glen Road, which you would get to from Balmoral, for instance, or coming up the Suffolk Road, that's generally where we are. You just drive in there and there's a red brick building there. Okay, you're asking about Stonyford Reservoir or Stonyford?
The sewage works. If it would be suitable for running.
Yeah, yes, that's interesting that you mentioned about the chain, because that's supposed to be open. There was a lot of talk about the path being around it. I've been down a few times, haven't seen the chain there. Doesn't mean to say somebody hasn't put the chain up. I'll go down and check that again. Great wee site, bit small for running. I think some of the roads along the reservoir might be better for running. Again, Strava might tell you a lot as far as that's concerned. But a great way to find places. Sleeve-na-Cloy is quite a small site for running. In other words, you walk around it and it takes you a good hour to walk around. You run around it and you've done it in about 20 minutes. It makes it sound like I'm a really fast runner, you know.
Yes, but, it's very impressive, Jim.
You realize that you have to run it twice. But give it a go. Always a great way to find new places. Yeah.
So maybe just for the person that was looking for what the kissing gate was, there's a few other people saying it's not quite as exciting as you think. But
yeah, I'm just thinking that we'll go to. We do have one. Yeah. Well, I suppose that's a kissing gate.
It is in the strictest sense of the term, yeah.
So you've got that. It's one where you can push it one way, you stand in there, and then you push it the other. It keeps cattle in, but it means you can walk around it. So it's there's a sort of like a U shape there. So you push that out, so you can get in here, and then you push that back and you walk through it. It's not quite as exciting.
There's a few comments that you could make it a bit more exciting. You can maybe take your sweet
I wasn't going to say that sort of thing. I wasn't
going
to stoop to that level, you know. It looks even less exciting whenever it's made of steel. Quite often, whenever you're talking about some of the numbers that we're talking about, I mean, Divis is talking about 200,000 visitors. Cave Hill, I think, used to get it up to about 300. They don't really take the numbers anymore. So if you think about 1% of the visitors being prone to vandalizing, then that means that there's 3,000 people a year coming up, or visits a year by vandals. So you've got to accept the fact that you do get sites that are vandalized. You don't open a site and get hundreds of thousands of visitors and everything stays perfect. That's just, it's like the rain, it just happens. That's, but one of the approaches that Belfast City Council take is that they put in metal rather than wood, and may not look quite appropriate for the countryside, but it's understandable in some of the sites that are particularly close to the city. just high numbers of people, and that's it. Okay, Lizzie,
Great.
anything else?
That is us run out of questions, and we've definitely run out of time. So I think we probably need to wrap this one up.
Well, listen, we're always available. I think info@belfasthills.org is always on the website anyway. It's been a pleasure. I just wanted to open your eyes in terms of other places to go. I realized I haven't given you gospel in terms of exactly how to get there, where to park, how you can get there by cycle or bus. There's a lot more information. But if you're prepared to get yourself lost and not too worried about it, and go up on a good day, that's half the fun of exploring. Get up there and have a look at these other sites. And I'm sure there's ones I haven't found out either. So good luck with that, and tell us how you get on, is the other thing.